So forget that I'm your son for a second
Yeah,
and tell a stranger on a long flight who you are.
obviously I'm a mother, but I'm an overtly kind, compassionate, nurturing, inquisitive person. Is that the kind of answer you're looking for?
I'm not looking for any kind of
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, like I don't yeah, that would be me. Obviously I'm a mother. I was a wife for many years. I was a daughter. But yeah, that's me.
Take me back to you're 17. Where are you? What are you chasing? What scares you?
So I graduated at 17. Um what was I chasing? So I was accepted at Johnson and Wales for college to be a chef. And I don't know, oddly, you knowing, Bill, oddly, my mother, who was a very strong person, actually gave me very little guidance about my future. So I made the decision not to go to Johnson and Wales at the last moment. I thought there's no sense in me going far away. It's going to cost money because I think looking back, I guess I was unsure about what I wanted to do with my life. What I thought I was going to do with my life was definitely predicated on the environment that I grew up in. Um, so I was 17. I'm a senior. I'm having a good time. I'm doing my thing, and I met your father. This is where I get a little wonky on the details, but if we graduate in June, I'm going to say I met him in May. He piqued my interest. He called a lot, but we never went out on a date until fall that year. So I started Hudson Valley. Um, and they had a culinary arts program. I started that. It was good. I was having a good time. Part of me would say I wanted to leave home, but yet again, I didn't mentally have that ability. That's it. I didn't have I didn't have an internal career drive like other people do. Nothing. No. Probably floundering a little bit. Yeah. That's it. That's 17.
So was there a when you look back on that time, was there a version of you that or a version of life, I should say, that didn't happen?
Um, my father died just before I turned 17. My life would have been different if he were still alive.
How?
My father gave me strength. He protected me. He believed in me. When he died, my life really, I guess I was just on shaky ground. I didn't know that at the time, though. I honestly didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I met your father.
Looking back, how did you process that?
Um, in the midst of it, I was 17. I graduated in high school. I was having a good time. I was somewhat reckless at 17. So I just enjoyed myself. I worked hard. I worked a few jobs. I worked at McDonald's. I used to clean houses. did all the things that people don't want their 17-year-old child to do. Um, I grew up in a small town, um, a small town, but on the outskirts were a lot of back roads and um, it was just rural. So a lot of drinking and driving and drugs and being with people that I shouldn't have been with.
All right, so tell me
But
something
it
you
still
did
gave me
back then that I'd never believe.
oh God. Let's see. Well, when I was 16, I had a relationship with someone who was 25, um, who was involved. He was an entrepreneur, um, who sold drugs. And yeah, that was an interesting choice. What are other things that I did? Yeah, it's odd. I think the drinking and the drugs and all that sort of stuff in my generation in a small town was kind of very acceptable. There was a brief period of time before I was in 12th grade. I went to another school, fifth to eighth grade in a bigger school district, Bethlehem School District. And going there was quite eye opening because the drugs were vastly different. I came from a small town with pot and things like that. I went to a more affluent town and oh, the drugs definitely changed. Um, but I think, yeah, like what did I, oddly, as much as I did things I shouldn't have done, I was always the person who was in control. I never drank to, I always wanted to be in control. Didn't drink to be drunk, didn't do drugs to be out of control. I was the one that made sure everybody got home safely and got to where they were supposed to be. Yeah. 16 dating a 25-year-old. Shouldn't have done that. And there are probably other things, but I can't share them with you.
I don't think it would be I don't think it would be illegal at this point to share them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, it's not even that they're illegal. It's you edit this? Yes, you edit this. You take parts out, things that shouldn't be said, or you decide, or
That's up to you.
again, I have no problem. Oh, I mean, again, I have no problem. The thing that I did that maybe would surprise you, maybe it wouldn't. I started intimate relationships at 14 years old, which was way too young. And God, this could go on for 8 hours. Um, doing that, I later realized in therapy was a coping mechanism based on the household that I grew up in. Um, instead of doing drugs to numb things, instead of doing alcohol to numb things, I made the choice for physical contact.
Sure.
Okay.
When how did you know dad was the one? Not
Oh,
not a feeling, but a moment.
second date, first date. Um, again, like I said, this is back when we had answering machines. He called and called and called and called and called and left voicemails, or not voicemails, but messages on an answering machine. Again, that's the summer I've just graduated. I'm very busy. I'm partying. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm spending time out in Cape Cod with a bunch of, again, much older guys. Um, I finally went out on the date. He just talked about himself. Again, your dad was 5 years older than I was. And I came home and said I was the biggest asshole I'd ever met. He calls to go out on the
What was
second
he
date.
what was he talking about himself about?
Oh my God. Work, the cars that he had. Um, I think he was attempting to impress me from like a financial standpoint, like that he was doing well and doing good and could do whatever. Um, but yeah, you're still an Italian boy living home.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask,
Um,
based on what you know of what you know, you learned to know of him, looking back, do you was it
yep,
coming from that place, or do you think it was a coping, like, I'm nervous and this is just how I speak when I'm
probably
nervous?
somewhat probably somewhat nervous. I also at that point I was 18. I mean, had never he dated girls his age. I'm this girl who just graduated from high school. So I don't probably somewhat nervous. Maybe he thought he had to impress me, right? Because I'm young. Date was whatever. I remember he just gave me a little kiss on my cheek. Again, I wasn't used to that. I was a more active young girl during high school. He called for a second date. I didn't want to go. It was my mother that said, "Go. It's a free lunch." And on that date, we went to lunch and then we went to a place called Thatcher Park. He brought a bottle of that Beaujolais wine that he liked.
Sure.
Um, and and I started to talk about my father. And I always say it was in that moment. Literally, we're talking about the second date. We're probably 5 hours into the second date. And I just knew he wasn't the same person he was on the first date. I talked about my father, and he seemed to understand the connection I had with my father. And your father became very protective, like in that moment, very protective of me and very supportive. And I just thought, oh, like this is my person. And it wasn't anything huge and dramatic. It wasn't anything over the top. It was a feeling, I guess, right? I mean, it was the fact that he could relate so much to what I was feeling and what I was talking about. And that was end of October, beginning of November, and by December, he told my mother he was marrying me. So I guess he thought the same thing, you know?
I know
Yeah. And
he
then from
lost
that point on, he always proved himself. Go ahead.
I know he lost his father when he was young. His dad was still alive at that time?
So I briefly met his father. Again, a traditional Italian family. I was brought home for a meal for dinner. So again, somewhere between October and December. Was a quite comical meal, but very traditional Italian meal, like
Yeah, I was gonna
12,000
ask what
courses.
what what was the menu?
Um, so I know that there was homemade pasta and I know that there was homemade sauce, but there was a portion of the meal where it was like roasted chicken. Like you have like the whole pasta portion, but then there's the whole dinner with like roasted chicken and mashed potatoes and vegetables. And his mom had cut the chicken because again, we're talking about whole chickens. And I had a piece of the chicken that has a piece of cartilage. It's kind of like a triangle. There's a specific name for it. I don't know what it is. And I was like holding it, looking at it because I don't think I knew what to do with it. And his brother, Donald, literally reached over and snatched it out of my hand because somehow he wanted that piece. And I guess there was some meat. It was very interesting. Everyone talked at the same time. Though, if his father said 5 words to me, it was a lot. I
Hmm.
honestly don't remember his father's, but I remember his mother. Oh, and they had this big German Shepherd who was mean as hell, who attempted to attack me. But yes, his father died. What I think it was February, and he was his father died in the car with him. He his father had come home early from work. From what I understand, he never came home early from work. Wouldn't let his wife take him to the hospital. Dad got changed, put him in the car, and as they were driving to the hospital across the street from the elementary school you went to, that's where the state trooper barracks used to be. And
Mhm.
Joe Sr. just took a breath and sort of slumped over. and dad pulled into the state trooper barracks, ran in, you know, said, I think my father's just had a heart attack. I'm going to start CPR. And they came running out and called an ambulance. But those details still are a little wonky. I believe that he he became conscious on the way to the hospital and said some things to your father, but died by the time they got there. So,
Was that something that you think, I don't know the right word, bonded or connected over because both of you had lost your dads? With how many years are we
oh,
talking in between?
100%. 100%. And so I would have been 18. So I'd only lost my father about a year before. Yeah, so it's only like a year's. And again, if you believe in the universe and higher powers that be and whatever, I always said my father sent him to me. So yeah, I think that we definitely bonded. Though the way we handled it obviously was very different. I was very young. Your father had to become the man of the household. He, you know, from a financial standpoint, had to take care of um, Mimi's house, make sure things were being paid. Um, the money that she would receive from her husband's, I don't know if it was called a pension or not, but we'll say for these purposes, she wasn't getting for a while. So there was no money coming in. So, um, dad just took over everything, you know. Trying to
Tell
remember
me.
exactly when he died. Mhm.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, no. I'm trying to remember the dates because of when Joe Sr. died, because we must have talked about, I don't know that we weren't engaged because we didn't get engaged until August. And no, and he had already passed. Maybe that's what it was. We had gotten engaged, but we wanted to get married sooner, but we postponed because of his financial responsibilities and things that he needed to do at home. So we didn't get married for, he died in 84. Wait, we met in 83. Joe Sr. died in 84. I got engaged in 84 and we married in 86. So
What's something about him that only you knew?
he took such pride in himself. And if something got vastly out of control, which it did in his career, there was a period of time, no one knew to the depth of his depression during that period. And that was probably twofold. One, he didn't let people know, and two, I protected him. Yeah, he was significantly impacted by what had happened in his career, which ultimately, the person that pushed him to the edge, ultimately, God, 15 years later, apologized. So, yeah, but no one knew what his depth of depression could be.
What was your
Otherwise, he was
marriage
a great person. Go ahead.
what was your marriage actually like? Not not the photo album version.
Oh, well, I always talk about the first year of marriage was very difficult for me, not for him. I declared divorce probably every other month. Um, because in so many ways, your father and I, like, I would say our character was very similar, but as people who had interests, our interests are vastly different. Your father loved history. He loved the news. He was a sporty kind of guy, nothing like me. So every time there was a slight disagreement, I'm like, we have nothing in common. So We should just divorce. He would just kiss me on the forehead. He would say, I love you. This isn't what you think it is. Our marriage, exceptionally traditional, exceptionally traditional. I mean, and that's where I get back to there was a reason I didn't have a career. I mean, I thought I was going to have a career, but I'm going to go to Johnson and Wales. I'm going to be a chef. But that's not who I am. I'm a nurturer. I take care of a family. I take care of a home. And that's what we were. I mean, I ran our household. Did we have disputes over it? At times. Um, we didn't really fight. We had conversations, didn't always agree, but we could agree to disagree and support the other person in whatever their belief was in it. God, I wish I could give you an example of something. Well, me, you know me and my organizing. He thought my organizing was over the top, obnoxious, ridiculous. And so what it's always been like this. But he knew that it was important to me. He let it go. Um, I knew he needed his quiet time, and I protected that. You know, he came home and he needed to unwind and rest. He couldn't take when the house was really loud with kids. I protected that. So it was a I don't think what you saw on the outside was actually very different than what it was on the inside. You know, we had a great sense of humor. There were a lot of things that we laughed and kidded about on the daily. Um, Probably the only thing, you know, from the time that we got married to after you were born, I just started gaining weight. And that, I say it was somewhat of a bone of contention because I obviously didn't look like the person he married. Um, he always tried to be very encouraging about whatever I needed to do to lose that weight. But then at some point, he just accepted me for where I was at and who I was. And ultimately, or oddly, it was probably a couple of years before he passed away. Like I was in a place of peace and I could work on it, and that started to happen. And then he got sick and died. And then I gained weight again.
I wanna I wanna ask you about 2 things there. So,
Yeah.
um, 1, I wanna go back to the traditional, right, a traditional household. When you say
Yeah.
that, what do you mean?
Oh, okay. So, you know, subconsciously, this was never conscious. Subconsciously, I took care of. So when we were first together, we were in an apartment for less than a year, and then we bought the townhouse. So with our townhouse, there was no outdoor maintenance that needed to be done other than like our courtyard. But I would say, you know, like cooking, cleaning, buying the gifts, arranging for the parties, all that sort of stuff. I did most of that. I will say in the townhouse, um, he he always cleaned, he always ironed, he always did his own laundry. Um, so so he definitely, I would say it was more of a shared combo while we were in the townhouse. Then you were born in the townhouse. Um, I went from like not working to working part-time, and you were my sole responsibility. Did he help 1,000% when you were initially born? Oh yeah, he was all over it. I mean, he was up every other night, you know, feeding you, changing you, whatever needed to be done. But running our household was me. When we moved to Three Windmill, he took care of the outside, I took care of the inside. And again, it wasn't we each supported each other in that role. Like even though when we were at Three Windmill, he still did the floors at Three Windmill because he washed the floors on his hands and knees. He believed hardwood needed to be washed on hands and knees. When he worked outside in the yard, I was always out there assisting, like, whatever he needed, you know, weeding or pulling those little twirly birds out of the mulch. He's outdoors working all day. I am literally bringing him breakfast and lunch and snacks and drinks. Does that answer, like, traditional? Yeah. And
Yeah, I
he's supported financially and, mentally and physically.
yeah, what I'm curious about is based on it could be your life experience, what you've seen,
Yeah.
what you've lived.
Yeah.
Um, do you think I get are you biased towards that's a recipe for success?
Oh, I don't think I'm biased because I'm very much a
And
believer
I and I
in.
and I shouldn't say bias. I should what I mean by that is, do you, I guess, fundamentally believe that there is a recipe within that that is really good? Because you don't see that often today, for
No, no,
various
and
for
I
various
comment
reasons.
on. Correct, correct, 100%. Um, First from a female perspective, I never had the desire for a career, so that just wasn't me. Women who had the desire for a career, I'm gonna use your aunt as an example, she always did, and she and I have been friends since we were 16. She's the one that introduced me to your father. Um, I never understood that drive, and I passed no judgment, but I never understood how dual income families, not even dual income, dual career managed a family. And I only say that because I know I couldn't. I also I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a recipe for disaster one way or another. I also know for me, I was a latchkey kid during middle school, and my childhood was quite tumultuous. I was going between two households, and then there was a time when I only lived with my father. Um, but I do question how dual income or dual career families raise a family because there's just not I just think there's only 24 hours in a day, you know. So, yeah, I don't know what's right or wrong though. I don't know if there is a right or wrong.
What do you all right, since dad has passed, what do you carry now that no one sees?
I think that I have been very strong. It's funny when I use the word strong because I always your father knows somewhat of my childhood. I always say I was resilient, and he would be like, "No, you're strong. You're very strong." So the part that no one sees is I don't have my person to talk to. The only people that I've ever shown everything to, the good, the bad, the ugly, was my father and your father. There's one other person that I probably can talk to completely about any thoughts that I'm having. But yeah, it was just my father and your father because I could let my hair down and they just listened. They made me feel safe. Yeah, that's the part. But I've since moving here, I probably have made more peace with that. Yeah.
When do you feel him the most now?
Oh, I just wrote this in my journal yesterday because I'm not. And that's the part that's kind of killing me. Um, So initially, the goldfinches. The goldfinches were around constantly. And I mean, like, in exceptional amounts, ridiculous amounts. And that would come and go over the years. Cigarette smoke was also another, what's the word? Indicator that he was around. And that comes and goes.
Why is the
When I
cigarette
moved
smoke
here,
a indicator?
um, it was it was actually one of the psychics that said to me, um, like for my father, it's dimes. She said, whenever you find dimes out of nowhere, it's your father. And she said, cigarette smoke is for your dad. And it literally, it's in my nose. Last
He he
summer,
he couldn't have chosen a higher denomination?
oh, well,
Can
and
we
and seriously, he quit smoking before I did. He was so good. Like, yeah, like why is it? Oh, wait, he used to say it all the time. Really, we couldn't have picked a flower like
No, no,
cigarette
no,
smoke.
I'm saying a dime. Let's can we upgrade to maybe 100
But you have to remember,
or just
my father,
20? I don't
right,
know.
right. Wouldn't that have been great? My father, though, was born in 1917, so a dime probably was, a decent
Fair.
amount of
Yep.
money. So, yeah.
That's a great point.
Um, right, great point, right? So he literally lived through the Depression. Um, so the cigarette smoke comes and goes. It was actually, I think it was last summer. Kelly and I were out in front of your house with Joe, and I was thinking Joe was playing, and I just remember thinking something about your father. Cigarette smoke comes so strong, and I just thinking, maybe it's me. So I looked at Kelly. Do you smell cigarette smoke? She's like, no, we're outside. No. Um, when I moved here, I would lay on the couch every night, and the cigarette smoke was so disgusting. But I think I needed it. Like I needed to know that he was around. And that that was probably during that very specific period of time in your lives. Was very interesting that it was so strong then, and then it stopped. Um, so I don't feel him quite as much, but I honest to God believe that he still impacts what goes on in my life. One of the psychics had said that she said he guides you like chess pieces. And she did that on the board. She went, he is pushing the pieces where they need to be. I'm like, oh, he was a chess player, so that kind of makes sense. So, um, and someone did tell me just recently, I was talking about, when you're in bed sometimes and you feel like something's touching you, like you're half asleep and you feel like someone's pulling at your leg or the blanket's being moved, and it's just a creepy
Hmm.
feeling. And
I,
someone
I I've
said
I've
to
actually
me,
never had that, I don't think.
oh, you okay? So then maybe this is really true because that's happened in the last few months. And someone said, "Oh, that's him. He's just letting you know he's there." Because I say good morning and good night to him every day,
Hmm.
and I say consistently he's on brand. He doesn't respond. But yeah, no, I talk to him every day. Yeah. So
Switching gears, what
mhm.
surprised you becoming a mother?
If I said to you nothing, does that seem odd? Nothing. I felt like I was made for it. I don't know. Everything came, I'll use the term easily. And it wasn't roses and sunshine, but I was never, nothing ever took me by surprise, or it wasn't that it took, yeah, there were how many things that happened that took me by surprise, but I never stumbled. I'm like, oh, all right, so this is what we're doing. Okay. That my biggest challenge being a mother was not letting my childhood fears impact you. And I think your father had the ability to help me through that. I was raised with such fear two sides. Raised with such fear, and then on another level, was made an adult at a very young age. Um, but I had fears about you not being near me, you going to school, you riding your bike, like fear, 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 letting you go to the park. The first time you were traveling with Nana, you were 4 on a plane with her, and I thought I'd lose my mind. And your father's like, "No, it's all good. We can do this." And he was so supportive of me and my fear. I could lean into him and let you, I hope, grow and not be impacted by my fear.
Tell me about a night that you were positive that you were getting it wrong.
I don't remember what the situation was. We were in the townhouse. You had to be 3 or 4. So your dad traveled from the time you were 2 to almost kindergarten, and he lived in New York City and came home. So he was in the beginning, he was gone 5 days a week, but then somewhere along the way, he was able to be gone 3 days and be home 4. I always said 3 was the most challenging age with you. 2 was easy. 3 was, he had a voice. And we were going upstairs. It's the first and only time I spanked you. And I don't know that it was more than like 2 little spanks, but in that moment I thought, "Oh, I know how people could beat their children." Like I knew that. I'm like, I was so frustrated. I have no idea what it was about, but I know it was a defining moment. Like, oh my God. And I was so frustrated. And, thankfully your dad, again, you were going pre-cell phones. Your dad always called at night. And I remember telling him that. I'm like, oh, like it kind of scared me, you know, that if I wasn't of good judgment, I guess, I'm like, oh, it could just beat a child. But that didn't happen, thank God.
You know
Yeah.
what's
And I have
interesting?
no idea what the incident was. But
You know what's interesting about that, um, is, I've never spanked Joey, right? But
hmm
like, I think all parents, right, we get frustrated at times, and there's times
hmm
that you feel like it could boil over. I think that's natural.
hmm
Um,
yeah,
and right, you're in that moment, whatever I did was probably against what you
whatever you do.
said, and you were disciplining me, right? That essentially that was
Right.
the
Yeah. Yep.
end of it, right?
100%.
And when I look back, it's just hearing you say that out loud. I remember that. And what I think is so
Oh,
interesting right now is the only thing I remember is I was really
yep.
scared. And I just
Oh
and
no.
right? Isn't that like, and I don't say that
That's
in a way.
so,
It's just like, you
no,
reflect
no, no.
on,
Yeah.
right? There's times I comment on what my son is doing, and I get frustrated,
Yep.
and I think I'm teaching him a lesson, and I think he's
hmm
comprehending, and I think he's going to change his
hmm
behavior, and this was a learning moment. And
Right.
I don't, 3 is a unique age. 5 maybe
Yep.
comprehended differently. Um, but it's
Right.
interesting, like the only thing the child walked away with there
Yep.
was fear. And I just think about, like, oh, okay, there's
Fear.
probably things that I've done that have just created fear or has not landed a message that I thought was intended.
Right.
It's just interesting.
Right. Right. Oh, 100%. And obviously I'm sorry that
I
that's
don't I
what
don't I
you
don't bring
wrote.
I don't bring that
Oh,
up to,
oh
like,
no, and I don't.
to clear the air.
Oh, no, no, no.
It's more of
And
a
I don't.
reflection of,
No,
like,
again,
"Huh,
like
it's interesting."
a reflection. Yeah. But it's interesting. Here you recall this, you have fear, and I know in that moment I had fear. So it's interesting, but you're right. I mean, all parents get frustrated, and I think I feel like after that I was even more cognizant of. I was gonna say breathing, right, through challenges, but that usually was just always who I was. Even today, I mean, literally everything can collapse around me, and I'm not impulsive. That's probably what scared me the most, is that I was acting impulsively, and I don't act impulsively.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that again, through therapy, I learned what happened in childhood with me is the reason I don't act impulsively. But there are other children that had the same childhood as I did, and their reaction is impulse. So it's just, nature and nurture. God, I wish I could remember what you did. I don't know what you did. I just remember being on those stairs.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, like what could you have done? I was probably tired, irritated, and maybe you were being sassy.
Sure. Oh, I have a tendency to
Who
do that
knows?
at times. So,
You
um,
do. And always
what?
under your breath.
Yep, still do that today. Kelly will tell you about that.
Do that today, huh?
Yep.
100%.
What is something that you did for me that I don't remember and never thanked you for?
I don't I mean, I don't think that you can reflect on when you were really young, you know? I'm gonna say middle school, high school. And I feel like you were always you always thanked me. I don't know if you recall this. I suppose this would be the only time maybe you didn't. I'm gonna use the word thank. We were in therapy with Therapy Joe, and it was after Dad had died, and you recall how our house was decorated. The reindeer were outside and the wreaths in the windows, and do you remember this?
I don't know.
Okay, okay. I must have said to you, or maybe you asked, inquiring about, like, the holiday decorations outside, and I'm like, I'm not doing it." It just obviously, I must have had a lot going on, right? And a lot of things to maintain with the house, and, I got a a teenage child, and my mother's health was men's and men's. So we're in therapy, and we're talking about this because you had said to me, "I think you're lazy."
Oh,
So,
wow.
again, non-reactive. I'm like, "We'll discuss this in therapy." So you say this in therapy to Joe. I tell him about the Christmas decorations. You tell she's lazy.
Hold on.
Picture us.
So we were in there together?
Mhm. We only did that a
Oh,
few
man. I
times.
don't remember this. Okay.
On the leather couch. I remember the leather couch. You were on one end near you were sitting on the end closest to the lifesavers, and I was on the other end closer to where Joe was.
Yeah.
So you made your comment, and Therapy Joe looks at me, goes, he like again, he wasn't one to necessarily ask you how you felt. I mean, he and I did later in therapy because I didn't know feeling words. Um, but he said, "Well, give me an idea, Claude, of like what your week is or what your day is." So I went through all the things that you do, as an adult, right? There's the things that Joe sees you do, but there's all these other things that go on that no one sees you do or that are going on in your head. And I go through the whole litany. Again, I'm very calm about it. And you just looked at me and went, "Oh, all right. Dan and I'll handle it." You and Dan Asum did the Christmas decorations on the outside.
Int
That was it. Like,
it's just I don't know. Okay. It's really interesting. I'm trying to think, like,
yeah.
what was like, why would I say because I wasn't angry at anyone that I can recall. Maybe I was, but I don't remember that. Hmm.
Yeah. But no, I think you never, do you feel like there was a time that you weren't appreciative or verbally appreciative of anything I did or didn't do?
Yeah, I think yeah, uh, what I think it is it's more vocalizing it than actually feeling that way,
Mhm.
right? It's not a
Yep.
lack of understanding or lack of awareness, it's a vocalization of said thing. So I know that's me, it
Mhm.
for a lot of different reasons, but yeah, I think so.
I think so, yes. Do I love when people say thank you? 100%. Or if they acknowledge what I've done? But for me, it's also, when they talk about languages of love, I'm gonna say acts of service, and you always acted to me in an appropriate way, like that you understood. Listen, you were very fortunate, you got a car at 16, you got a car when you graduated college. I mean, you know, going to school, like, that being taken care of. Um,
Yeah, to that point, the thing that I always come back to would be not don't watch what maybe don't listen to what people say, watch what they do.
100% actions speak louder than words. That's I again, do I love when someone verbally acknowledges something? Yeah, but for me, actions have a far greater impact. Yeah, yeah.
What's a hill that you'll die on that other people would find ridiculous?
Well, there's probably I would say there's 2. So the first one would be I'm not gonna say this correctly, but I'll say it and then I'll figure it out as I'm talking. Um, an overt belief that you're not responsible for me, that adult children I hear so many of my friends who have adult children, and the parents are so verbally involved in what they think is right and wrong with their kids. You know, maybe the way they're raising their kids or the way they're spending their money or I literally can just go, "Eh." I mean, unless you were doing something horrible legally, physical abuse, I can I can just say, "No, it is his life." I use a statement with friends all the time. He is my life, but his life is not mine. And I stand by that. And I've gotten in many debates with people about that. And the other thing it actually has to do with infidelity. Not that I could ever remain in a relationship when someone was unfaithful, but that I understand how people could. And they just don't get that. They're like, how could you agree with them? Like, I don't agree with it, but I do understand how people could stay. I I understand it mentally, I understand it physically, I understand it financially, that it's not black and white, that it's gray. So those are probably 2 hills. Yeah.
Why do you where does the belief come from? What did you say? It's not what did you say? It's not my life, it's his.
Oh,
How did you say that?
his his life is mine. I'm sorry. He is my life, his life is not mine. You are my life, but your life is not mine.
Where does that come from?
Um, so again, made up in my head. Again, probably comes from childhood because I had such expectations from childhood right up until adult that I was groomed that I was responsible for my mother. And I just kept thinking, no, I'm not. Like, I'm an adult. I have my own family. Like, I'm not responsible for your happiness. I'm not responsible for your entertainment. I'm not responsible to make you think that I'm a good mother or a good wife. That's not my responsibility. There's a term, which again, I didn't know this for many years. It's called parentified. Have you heard that term?
No.
Parentified. It's when a child, I hate using the word groomed, but it's the easiest one, has been groomed to parent their parent.
Hmm.
So at a very young age, I was parenting my mother, making her feel nurtured, making her feel loved, making her all the things that you do as a parent, all the things you do with Joey. I was doing that at a young age for my mother, and that continued on. And that was something that I wanted to break that what had been ingrained in me. And again, that's where I talk about the fear that your father helped me, like, no, this is his life. He's okay. And again, you were 15 when he died, but just little things, riding your bike around the corner. It's okay. He can go. Yeah. So I was determined to break that cycle.
Got two things there then.
Yeah.
One would be, so you brought up your parents a couple times.
Hmm.
What's something that you wanted to keep as you got older? And what is one thing that you wanted to never repeat? And you've kind of talked about those things. And if you
Oh,
know the reason, I'd love to
yeah.
hear
I
the
mean,
reason why you think it showed up in your parents that way.
so my parents were vastly different. From my father, again, if you talk nature versus nurture, I feel like from my father, I got this great empathy. I got this kindness. I got this non-judgmental, that was all from my father. Everyone adored my father. My father was just a good person. Didn't have um a racist bone in his body. He he was just a good, kind person. From my mother, what did I get from my I got a lot from my mom. I got good things from her, right? Cooking, um, use of language, words. My mother was tested a genius, so she was exceptionally intelligent. Um, but the pattern of my childhood, she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. That didn't She had been diagnosed with other things, but that diagnosis came in the end, and that was the most accurate. I don't think I didn't I obviously didn't know that I wanted to break that cycle until I had you. Like, I knew my childhood wasn't normal, but I never thought of it as abnormal. I just knew it was different, you know? Um, like, it didn't stifle me, but it was obviously when you were born, I just knew that I didn't want to repeat that. That answer your question?
Yeah. Did you, I
Okay.
mean, I think you've already hit on this too. Like, do you think you've been able to manage that, or do you think that it has come up in any way?
Oh, so I managed a lot of it when I went to therapy, worked through it. Slight side note, in therapy with Joe, talking about all these various things of life, blah, 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 blah. I was probably in therapy with him, I'm going to say a couple of years. And all of a sudden, one day I said to him something about borderline personality disorder. And he goes, "Who had borderline personality disorder?" I go, "My mother." I said, "I never told you that?" He goes, "No." And, I always used to kid that he had an imaginary whiteboard that he was taking notes on. I go, "Do you need to look at your whiteboard to try to figure out some things?" He goes, "I do need a minute." And he goes, "Things make more sense now." I go, "Okay." Um, he goes, I said, "I'm so sorry that I never told you. I apologize." Um, yeah, that I never told him. So I thought I dealt with a lot of that. I thought that, I got good tools. Aside from work that I did with him, I did so much reading to understand, about being the child of a borderline, specifically the female of a borderline. But I've had one relationship in my life since your father passed that tested everything again. And during it, I kept feeling like a failure because I'm like, oh, I should have recognized this sooner and should have walked away from this, and I didn't. So
Hmm.
that's, yeah, that one was challenging. But again, I go, find the positive, learn the lesson. That's another one of my sayings: find the positive, learn the lesson. Try to find the positive, learn the lesson. So, yeah.
On that topic, um, was there ever a moment you were proud of yourself and never told anybody?
Since your father died, it is my personality to just keep it to myself. That's one of the reasons I journal, because I can sort of get it out. But oh my God, yeah, it would never. I never said it out loud, or made the conscious decision. I'm not telling anyone. But yeah, the last 20 years,
Yeah.
you know, I've been, yeah, yeah. I could over and over, from whatever probably one of the first issues I had when your dad died was starting the lawnmower. That like literally broke me down. Like, but I did it. I ultimately did it, and then decided, yeah, I'm not doing this again. Yeah, yeah. But there have been a lot. But I don't. It would be nice to have accolades from someone else, but I don't need it. I learned to not need it.
When did you first realize I had become an adult? Like, almost like the exact moment, if you can recall. And hopefully it's not within a few years of how old I am right now.
No, I will say it's a a pinpointable moment. You were in college, and I don't know what the class was, but you were talking about, it had something to do with budgeting for when you graduated. You took it very seriously. You called me and you wanted to go through, like, you had had a list of things, and you were um allocating, we'll say X amount, what you thought would be correct amounts. And I went through my budget. Maybe you added in a few more things. You had a very inclusive budget. Like, I was exceptionally, most people, they're in college. You're thinking like rent, maybe a car payment. Like, then nobody's thinking you were inclusive. And I remember thinking, oh, oh, he's, that was a very pinpointable moment in your life. I've told that story many times to people, like, but you were always an old soul. You were always more grown up than, I don't know if you felt that way, but you were always older than your birth date. Yeah.
Hmm.
I would say that would probably be the first moment, like, "Oh, yeah, like, you're an adult." Did you flounder along the way? A couple of times. Not a lot, though. But for the most part, you always took everything so seriously, you know? Thought it through. You've always been very, aside from being curious, you've always thought things through.
What is something embarrassing as a kid you've never told anyone and you are about to put on this record on this recording?
the typical thing, you walking in on your dad and I in the middle of having sex. You don't recall that, I'm
Fair.
sure?
I
We
don't
were
recall that. No, thank God.
which is
I
wonderful.
do not
Thank
recall
God.
that.
No, blankets were up. We lived at 3 Windmill, and, you walked in, dad grabbed me. He said something like we were wrestling, and, you wanted something to eat. You wanted to know when breakfast and your father was like, "Go downstairs. You can have whatever you want. We'll be down soon." But, yeah, but I don't think I've ever shared that story.
All right,
Yeah,
we're gonna move on
yeah.
from that one. Um,
Not uncommon, but
what is something that you've assumed that I've known that you maybe have never, said to me?
I can't think of a thing.
We'll come back to it if you think of something.
Yeah, because I can't think of what would I assume? Yeah, when you were a kid and you told me I was lazy for not putting out the Christmas decorations. I assumed you knew I
Yeah,
was
that
busy.
hopefully I don't get spanked for that. Um,
Yeah,
what
no,
does
no.
what does a good next chapter look like? And what do you still want?
Oh, oh, I can honestly say I have no idea. Um, and I say that honestly. So one of the things, you know, that your dad wrote us letters, and one of the things that he wrote in the letter is to follow my dreams. I look at this letter a few times a week. It's on my phone. And I always think, I have no idea what my dreams are. And that probably sounds peculiar to some people,
I'm
but
just laughing because I didn't know that, but you've said things like that similar to me before, and I'm laughing because 'cause I'm like, "You're definitely reading that like,
yeah,
I don't know what they are."
I have no idea. I have no idea. So, I am f- one, I am very content being alone. We know that. I don't need to talk to people. And it's not because I'm antisocial. If you want to look at it from a zodiac standpoint, I am a typical Cancer. I'm a crab. Being in my shell is good. Um, but yet when I socialize, people are always like, "Oh my God, she's like so fun. She's this and that." But then I have to retreat because I need to recharge. Dreams. I mean, I've thought of things, right? Like there's some things that I'd like to try, but there are no dreams. I just want to be peaceful. I want to be happy, content, which I feel like I'm all of those things. But no, there are no, yeah, that probably, and I'm sure that some people think, well, how can you live a life with no dreams? But I'm very content. So, and I also just kind of go with the flow. Yeah, no dreams. Is that odd? You'll find out as you interview more people.
Sure. If I'm playing this 40 years from now and say your your one grandchild right now
Grandchild.
hears this,
Yep.
what do you
Yep.
hope they hear in your voice?
Sincerity, that I'm authentic and sincere. Yeah. And again, like I'm not a spontaneous person for the most part. My answers are always thought provoking, it's never just like off the cuff. It's just who I am. Yeah. Authenticity and sincerity.
What's the most important thing we didn't talk about?
Nothing, I don't think. Again, to talk about my childhood is a whole other ball of wax. Um, You had asked me something the other day when you were talking about setting this up, that one of the questions is, "Who are you beyond the resume?" And that I'm like, "Huh, that was, like, really I didn't know." And then I got thinking about it, and I thought, I guess I'm a person I've never been a resume person, because when I think of a resume person, I'm thinking about someone who is probably more driven and more career oriented and has accomplishments that are, tangible, right? Education, jobs, and I think I've had great success in my life, but I don't know that it's tangible. It's not it's not about a job, it's not about a career. It's just about who I am and who the family that I had and how I interact with people. And yeah, it's not tangible. But I don't think there's anything that we missed. I don't think.
I think it's an interesting way you phrased that. It's based on maybe how you would measure that, though.
Correct. Like, how is it measurable? How is it measurable what the things that I've been so successful in? How do you measure it? I feel like you're a well-rounded kid. Um, but how do you measure that? I feel like, you know, my marriage was very successful. Of course, the other person's not here to tell you that. Did he write a letter about it? Yeah. Um, the any of the relationships that I've had with people, and I think even the relationships that may no longer exist, I would think that people would, for the most part, have good things to say about me. But that's not tangible. It's not, from this date to that date. It's not Ivy League. It's not a Fortune 500 company.
Well, I think I've learned a lot of things that I didn't know. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't think there were a lot of surprises at the same time. So
Right?
what I want to say is thank you for trusting me to do this.
Of course. Oh, absolutely.
I love you.
My pleasure. I love you.
And that's the episode.